Here in San Juan, it's time for some fun in the sun as we kick off the summer of multiplayer Magic. And what could be better than sitting out by the pool with your friends, slinging some spells, weaving some tall stories, and some of the wackiest, weirdest, most wonderful interactions in the game. Now, while F and M are three letters that make Friday the best night of the Magic Week, we're here to introduce you to three more letters that are your guarantee of fun at any time. EDH. When he's not head judging the Pro Tour, Sheldon Menery is busy building decks for this 100-card format. That's no surprise, because he was pivotal in bringing EDH to the global community.
EDH was created as a format by my friend Adam Staley in Alaska, in my little casual play group up there. And when I left Alaska for Virginia, I took it with me, and my group in Virginia loved it so much that I thought it might be a great thing to introduce to the judges of the Pro Tour. So I brought it to the Pro Tour, and it caught on like wildfire amongst the judges. I did a Star City article on it with a contest and got a lot of entrants, and now it's the most popular format in the world.
Sheldon has three opponents today, and they're highly involved in the world of Magic.
Yeah, so I'm Scott Larabee, and the general I'm going to play is Teneb the Harvester, and he is a black-white-green dragon. When he does combat damage to an opponent, you get to resurrect a creature from any graveyard. And the deck is kind of built around graveyard recursion, has a lot of angels in them, and has a fair amount of enchantments in it. Though the actual reason I built the deck, when I first built the deck, was that I noticed people weren't playing a lot of enchantment removal in EDH, and I went, oh, enchantments are broken, I'm going to do this. And so I run about 14 or 15 enchantments in the deck.
Scott takes his EDH pretty seriously, but when it comes to competition, Brian David Marshall is a tough nut to crack.
You know, it's funny. For a long time, I was pretty resistant to playing EDH, and I would give Sheldon and Scott a hard time about it. I was like, you guys are just playing this silly multiplayer format. You know, why don't you draft? Why don't you do this? I was at Japanese Nationals a couple years ago, and Scott and Ron Foster roped me into a game. They're like, come on, we need someone to play. Gave me a Mir Vig deck that Ron Foster had built, and I was playing it, and I was having a lot of fun, but I was just like, why is this card in here? Why is this card in here? God, why wouldn't you build this deck with this card? And pretty soon I was going through my collection and building a deck, and I play a lot now, and I really enjoy it.
Making up the fabulous foursome is high-level judge, GG's live producer, and event coverage member, Rashad Miller.
Basically, it plays a bunch of bad druids, and eventually you play a bunch of druids, draw a bunch of cards, and eventually draw things like Coat of Arms and a Drowsy Monument, and attack with a bunch of 1/2s and stuff.
So that's the players. Now, how about the game? Scott was first out of the blocks with a pretty scary start. Luminarch Ascension is a great example of a card that rocks in EDH because it talks about each end step. That means the counters pile up pretty quickly, and the table was instantly on red alert. When Scott added Survival of the Fittest, it was clear who was making the early running. Rashad was the first to put his general onto the battlefield. Seaton, Crozen Protector, was getting ready to generate some mana. A lot of mana. For Sheldon, things weren't going so well.
If you'd only thought of that.
See? Temple of the False God only gets you mana once you get to 5. 4, not so much. As the game progressed, Rashad started to put some serious combo action together. Recycle with Gaia's Cradle was pretty potent, and he just kept on trucking. While there are only a few actual rules to EDH, somehow everyone likes to add a couple of their own, what you might call their own life lessons. Take BDM, for example. What are his 2 rules?
Kill Sheldon. Kill Scott.
Straightforward rules, I'm sure you'll agree, but BDM was struggling to follow through on them. Sheldon's second rule was also proving somewhat difficult to implement, although the first one is well worth adopting.
Is the first rule. Don't be a jerk. Second rule, kill Rashad first.
As you can see, Rashad was going nuts. Slate of Ancestry drew him a ridiculous 16 cards, and the early threat of Scott seemed to be disappearing, not least because Chameleon Colossus was getting humongous. Humongous. That's a word you might want to get used to when you play EDH. As Rashad closed in on finishing off the Pro Tour Tournament Manager, I wondered what his rules were.
Okay, these are time-tested, immutable laws of EDH. The first rule is, if somebody at the table asks all the players to count up the number of creatures in the graveyards, you have entered the Avatar of Woe phase. The second rule of EDH is it's always a good idea to attack Rashad Miller.
That Colossus was just, well, colossal, and nobody at the table seemed able to cope with it. Sheldon quickly followed Scott out of the game, leaving just the Pro Tour historian between Rashad and a famous victory. BDM certainly had some shenanigans going on. Tightspout Tyrants, a world of entertainment waiting to happen. But he couldn't stop the onslaught. The Green Army had overrun the table, 1-0 to the Druids. So, what would the four players be up to during the rest of the weekend?
I'm going to do event coverage for the Pro Tour and play some more EDH.
I'm going to head judge the Pro Tour, and I'm going to play some EDH.
The rest of the weekend I'm the tournament manager for the Pro Tour, so I'm making sure everything's going smooth, and I'm going to play EDH every night.
Commentating on the Pro Tour, getting some drafts in, and playing EDH.
It wasn't long before they were back in action, looking for more great multiplayer fun. With Arch Enemy making its appearance this weekend, players had a new multiplayer experience to try. Whether it's Arch Enemy, Lane Chase, or more EDH, there's a great summer of multiplayer magic ahead. Oh, and just in case you were wondering, what are Rashad's rules for EDH?
Well, rule 1, you let everyone else do what they want to do. Rule 2, you win the game.